Hello, everyone. Well, if you're joining us at this moment, that means that you're either going to or you have seen the Pray Away film. You know, on the Free Mom Hugs page, we've been promoting it and just really looking forward to this film because of the significance of why it was done and the hope that we have in the film and making a real difference in the world around us for the community that we serve at Free Mom Hugs. This is a panel discussion about the film. We'll be talking about things that could be a little triggering. Triggering means that it may contain words or a subject that had been harmful for you in the past or traumatic experience for you. And I just want you to be aware of that. And even though the film may offer the same type of warning, I just would encourage you to watch it if you can. If you have to take it in little increments, that's fine too, or watch it with a friend, or encourage your family or friend, an ally to you, to watch it so they can be able to talk about it, okay? So we have an excellent panel. I can't think of any three people other than those who are actually in the movie, and we have one of them here, that could speak to this subject better than these three. I know them personally. I've spent time with them, and honestly, to get through this panel discussion without, being a little emotional, it's going to be hard for me, but I don't want that to be a distraction. We're going to push on through it, okay? Just a little introduction. We are talking about the Pray Away film that aired on Netflix last night. We've been anticipating and we've been hearing from people who've seen the film and are just sharing through their social media feeds, and it's been a great response so far. The Pray Away film is about conversion therapy, reparative therapy. If you're not familiar with those terms, what that means is any type of practice, therapy, or prayer that would try to change or promise someone from being gay to straight. It's damaging, it's deadly, it's proven harmful, and it's outlawed, banned in most states. But as we know, and I've said it before, we can ban conversion therapy today, but it really is not going to make a difference in the world around us until we hear a different message from the pulpit. And that means affirmation, affirming of total acceptance and celebration of the LGBTQIA plus community. Going forward, if you hear me use the word gay, that's what I mean, the LGBTQIA2 plus community. The acronym's important, but for verbiage and time, when I say gay, that's what I mean, okay? Conversion therapy, reparative therapy. The film is about that. If you've been able to see it, you've had some wonderful examples of it. Also, besides trying to change someone's sexual orientation or gender identity, there is a dynamic to conversion therapy that would also call for a person to be celibate, single, celibacy, not having sex, not participating or acting in any way sexual. So introductions. First of all, I know you probably recognize some familiar faces here. And if not, let me just introduce to you briefly Carrie Fletcher. She's a graduate from Dallas Theological Seminary of Biblical Studies. She has years of involvement with the Reformation Project, and currently she serves as the Executive Director Extraordinaire for Free Mom Hugs. And we are so fortunate to have her expertise, and her theological background in the mission of Free Mom Hugs. To your lower, I don't know which your left or right, my right, but anyway, underneath me, Katrina Kalb. Katrina Kalb is a former chaplain, youth pastor. She has degrees in sociology, psychology, and currently she wears many hats under the Free Mom Hugs national program. Her card reads, program and social media director, but she does wear many hats. We're so fortunate to have her. And then if you recognize Yvette Snyder from, she had a contributing role in the film Pray Away. So if you recognize her, that's where you do. and she has studied English language at the University of California. And she's an author, and she's a spokesperson with GLAAD about the ex-gay movement. So she has quite a lot of experience, information, and she can really speak to the issue. And I'm so thankful, panelists, thank you for being here today. You know, this is something at the forefront of everything that we do at Free Mom Hugs. I know you as friends and I know you as colleagues, but what you have in common and that our viewers may not know is that you have survived conversion therapy. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So if you wouldn't mind starting with Carrie, and then we'll go to Katrina, and then Yvette, you go last on this, and just introduce yourself to our viewers so they can get just a little idea about your history and where you're at now. Carrie, go ahead, please. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I'm happy to be here and happy to be on this panel with each of you. So a little about me. I spent 14 years trying to change my sexuality because of my faith. I grew up in a small Baptist church in Oklahoma, and I gave my life to Christ in that small Baptist church when I was 12 years old. And so faith has always been something really important to me. And I also knew at an early age that I was different. I didn't really know what the different was. I just knew I was relating to people differently, and I felt like people, they were relating to me differently as well. I always had boyfriends all through high school, into college, and then somewhere in there, I met my first girlfriend in college. She was a Christian, and we always had questions about being gay and being Christian, if it was right. We never really come to any conclusions about that, but we just knew how we felt about each other. My second girlfriend, same kind of relationship. She was a Christian, I was a Christian. We had the conversation, is being gay right? And we didn't have any conclusions with that either, but it caused a lot of tension in both of those relationships. And after the last relationship that I was in, I had a lot of questions about, back in that time, it was called the gay lifestyle. You could Google gay lifestyle and, there would be all kinds of information on the internet. And so I just Googled being gay and being Christian. And the first thing that came up was a testimony or bio of Ann Paulk, John and Ann Paulk. And Ann shared her story about how she used to be gay. She wasn't anymore. She spent a lot of time in therapy, going to, just kind of praying and her relationship with God, and that they were talking about how they had changed their sexuality through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And they were also a part of a ministry called Exodus International. And if you've seen Pray Away already, that Exodus International is at the forefront of this documentary. So I thought I had found it. All of the questions that I had, why am I gay? Is this gay? Is this right? I thought I had found it. And so I jumped headfirst into the teachings and all of the resources provided by Exodus. And I made the decision that I didn't want to be gay anymore, that I wanted to pursue change, just like the leaders of Exodus. I wanted to be right with God, and I felt like I had to not be gay in order to do that. So I spent about 10 years I went to national conferences. I met some of the leaders that you see in the documentary Pray Away. I heard all their stories. I read their books. And I didn't want to be gay anymore. But after about 10 years, I thought that God had changed me at that point. And then I became attracted to another woman. And I was just angry. My world was pretty much turned upside down at that point. So I started, again, just doing more research, and I came across Torn by Justin Lee, and then Matthew Vine's book, God and the Gay Christian. And I read both of those books, and it really just started changing my thinking. And through another series of processes, I guess, I came out as a gay Christian in December of 2016. So that is kind of a big picture of my story.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much. And Katrina, if you would do the same, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I know we share a lot of stories, being 80s kids, and Yvette too. It was definitely a different time in the 80s to grow up and have messages about the gay lifestyle versus what, a lot of people hear today. So I think that that's unique for us. And hopefully that will help some people too to understand. I was raised in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And when I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And so for me, the times I went to church, because Oklahoma is the Bible Belt, would be when I stayed the night with girlfriends and on a Saturday night. And of course, no matter what happened, you still went to church on Sunday morning. And so I always went with my friends, and that's kind of my first introduction to God and Christianity. And in being 6 years old, I remember one of my friends' moms asking if I knew about Jesus, and I said no. And she said, well, if you want to go to heaven, you have to have Jesus in your heart. And so I remember laying in bed that night and saying, Jesus, whoever you are, I want you in my heart. I want to go to heaven. And so that was the beginning, but also kind of, again, without growing in a Christian home, the good news kind of stopped there until I was 13 and went to church camp at Falls Creek in Oklahoma, which is very well known in the state. And I was already definitely feeling like I was different. And I've even used the phrase of I felt like I was dropped on the wrong planet, that I was getting along with everyone, but I sure didn't feel like I was like all of my other girlfriends. There was something different about me, but I wasn't even sure what it was yet. But I knew it was a big deal. And at Falls Creek, there was a sermon from the pastor at First Baptist Houston. And the title of the sermon was Sinning Unto Death. And so this confused 13-year-olds went running to the altar as fast as possible for the first of many times to get saved. As a Baptist, you do that frequently. And so after that, I went to high school, and, again, it was the 80s. So there was a lot of TV shows that made fun of gay men, that they were the sitcom punchline. And there wasn't much about gay women, but I still was feeling, again, like something was different and wrong with me. And when I heard people in high school making fun of other girls and spreading rumors about them being gay or being lesbian, I didn't want anything to do with them. I didn't want to be around them because I did not want to be accused of the same thing. I went to college at the University of Oklahoma and then got deeply entrenched in the Baptist Student Union. I found a huge family there. It was the largest organization on campus. And you always had a friend in class. You always had someone to sit with in the cafeteria. And you had connection. And I took it head first and began then to really hear more specific messages about homosexuality being wrong and the sickness. And, the words about no sin is greater than the other. But I definitely got the message that this one that I had was, and began then to talk to counselors and express to certain people that I dealt with being gay, was the phrase. Not that I was gay. And so from there, I just continued whatever I could, praying, fasting, Bible studies, bondage breaker books, support groups, traveling to Kansas City to Vineyard Movement, Holy Spirit, casting demons out. You all know it. I did it all, and it still didn't work. And at 25, I was in ministry, and I was a chaplain at a private Christian school and also a youth pastor. And I wanted to continue in ministry, and I knew this was the speed bump, that if I didn't get this fixed, it was over. So after many prayers and deliverance sessions, I signed myself up here in Oklahoma City at First Stone Ministries and put myself into conversion therapy. And it instantly went into a lot of discussions of why I had same-sex attraction and blaming family and upbringing and circumstances, which only added to the guilt and the shame, and then led to 2 suicide attempts. And I was then outed at my church that I worked for. And that began my process of feeling like I had to decide then if I was going to be gay or Christian. And it was a long, hard, very dark journey, dark night of the soul journey. But today I am lucky and blessed to be a part of Free Mom Hugs, and I'm still here. And that in itself is amazing. So I'm grateful for that.
Oh, Katrina, thank you so much. And I have to say thank you, girls, for just sharing such tender, intimate parts of your life, first and foremost. I know this is probably not easy, but I'm so thankful for you. So Yvette, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I'm going to share something earlier, because if you've seen Pray Away or you're about to see Pray Away, you'll see a lot of what happened later on with me. So I just want to talk a little bit about what led up to that and my early childhood. I was raised Catholic, and my dad was Mexican American from South Texas. I grew up in Los Angeles, and he taught me how to pray from when I was super little. And every night I'd kneel beside my bed and say my prayers. And I thought it was a little weird, but you just kind of do what your parents tell you. And then I really started to feel Jesus. And I just loved him so much. And I felt like he was a protector and a friend and a confidant. And that's when I was little, like 3 until 8 years old. And when I was 8 is when I started to feel different. But like Carrie said, it's not different in a sexual way, just not really fitting in. I cut my hair short. No one could understand why. Why do you want your hair short? Why do you want, this was the 70s, because I'm older than you guys. And and I had this like corduroy pants with this corduroy jacket that the boys wore that I thought was the coolest thing ever. But then I wasn't fitting in with the other girls. So I didn't have a real friend group. And I was an athlete, and that took a lot of time in my life of training and working out. So I wasn't doing the social things that other people were. And I don't even know that I would have anyway, because I just wasn't fitting in. And I had a difficult home life. So when I was a teenager, I just so angst filled. And when I was a freshman, in high school, I did contemplate suicide and was just very depressed and lonely. So I just said, God, where are you? I feel like you're not even helping me at all. So I decided, that's it. I don't believe in God anymore. And then when I was a freshman in college, and I really, even reflecting on this, I don't know why this happened, but one of my friends, when we were in the eating area called the back lot at UC Irvine, in front of everyone who was there, I mean, you're talking like over 100 people. And she says, I know you're gay, Yvette. Like, I don't even know what brought this on. Even as many times as I think back on it, I don't know what happened. And my friend Carol was there, and she's like, how dare you call her gay? You don't, she's not gay. And I remember thinking, I'm so happy that I have a friend here that's sticking up for me, but I really wished she would have said, who cares if she is? Because I felt so humiliated, because I knew inside that there was something different about me. And I knew that I was probably gay, but I didn't, no one was saying it was okay. And so then my junior year, I went to India, to the University of Delhi, and I ended up meeting an Indian woman there. And that was my first lesbian relationship. And I was just heartbroken when I had to go home, because I thought, this is the one person, the only person I'm ever going to love. And then when I got back, I told my friend Ed, who was my best friend, and he was a gay man, and we had been friends for a few years. And he's like, well, I'm going to plug you into the gay community. And so he did. And everyone, all my friends were gay men, because that's all he knew were gay men. So then that's all I knew were gay men. But then it was December of 1987. And he told me he had AIDS, and I broke down. I just couldn't believe it. I was 22 years old, and I thought, this is someone I thought I would know for my whole life. And then we'd grow old together. And now he's going to die. And he said, I'll be here next Christmas and the Christmas after that. But at that point, people were living, some like 59% of people died within the first 15 months. And so one of my friends got sick, then the next one, then the next one. It was just this pattern. I was just so upset going to funerals and being so young and seeing all of this, suffering, just horrible suffering. And so I worked for a law firm, and one of my coworkers said, well, you should come to church with me. And he would share scriptures with me. And I said, no, I've seen people at gay pride parades in West Hollywood saying, all gay people are going to hell. No, my church isn't like that. And there was no free mom hugs. There was no one giving hugs. There was no one saying, I'm a Christian and I love you, or God loves you. No one was saying that. So I went to church, and I felt the presence of God. And I'm like, this is the Jesus that I used to know. I'm so excited to reconnect, and this is what I need. And I'm going to get the comfort and support that I remember having when I was little. But then it was, no, you have to change. It's a sin. You're going to go to hell. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So.
Thank you so much. I know now you each have shared a kind of a timeline of when you first kind of realized that something was different, or you felt different. Can you tell me specifically maybe about how old you were? And this is a question for each of you, whoever wants to go first. But when did you first feel different, and or you noticed that you were being treated different, to where you really had to stand there and check yourself, like, oh, it's official. I am different.
I'll start.
Okay, Carrie,
yeah, I'll jump in. I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. I mean, I can't really nail down a specific age where I was like, yes, I am different, but it felt like those grade school, junior high years. And as Yvette alluded to, it wasn't sexuality that at the time that I, was thinking through that. I was too young for that. I was being treated differently, and I acted differently because of the way I looked. I had that Dorothy Hamill haircut. I was often mistaken as a boy. I was faster than all the boys. We'd go to recess and I would outrun every one of them. So the different for me at that age was being called a tomboy. And it was that word. I hated that word because it was not a compliment. People would say that to me, and that was some sort of insult. It wasn't a good thing that I was a tomboy. So I knew, 5, 6, 7 years of age, that there was something different about me. I had no idea that it was about, my sexuality. It was I just felt different.
Interesting. I love that you mentioned it wasn't about sexuality, because oftentimes that's where our mind first goes, is sex, right? Mm-hmm. And at that young age, and then shame. That's what I heard when you were sharing your story, that first, you didn't think about sex, and that you were shamed by the way you looked, or that you were faster. So if that was your experience.
Well, I felt different probably around the time when I cut my hair short when I was 8. And like I said, I don't know why I wanted to do that. I just did. I just wanted my hair like that. But I noticed when I was in 6th grade, I had a crush on one of my friends. And I knew that was a big no-no. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't act any certain way. I wasn't alienated in the sense of no one was making fun of me. No one was saying anything, because I wasn't saying anything, because I tend to be an introvert. And I just shut down. And no one really knew me. And I knew because it was, you'd see the boys on the field playing Smear the Queer and calling boys who weren't exactly stereotypically masculine, horrible slurs, which we all know. And even though there was really nothing said about the girls so much, I knew don't act different, don't say anything, just keep to yourself. It was very lonely, very isolating.
Good. And what I heard there was you noticed first off, like your haircut, and then realizing gender, the difference between genders, pink means girl and blue means boy, I think a lot differently about gender reveal parties even now. And then when you had the crush, being treated differently when you see what's happening around you, to know I'm not going to act upon that, or certainly not going to say anything about that.
Yeah.
So again, it's shame and traditionalism. So Katrina, how about you?
Yeah, I feel a little bit of both of your stories, but definitely I was a tomboy. I will say I don't necessarily feel like I was treated differently because of it, at least not in the beginning. So age 6 and 7, I definitely preferred my football socks and my soccer shorts and my cleats, and played in the grass. And as I got older and hit, middle school, teenage years, I went through the same thing of all of a sudden I wasn't interested in what my girlfriends were interested in. And I think I became bored in a sense with what they chitter chattered about. And it didn't mean anything to me of who was the quarterback or who was the cute new boy in school. And I kind of ended up becoming best friends with my girlfriend's boyfriends because we had more to talk about and identified more with them. But I definitely, as I got older, began to really, really notice and felt that isolation and loneliness of I'm not like everybody else, and kind of found myself even in the third wheel or the fifth wheel situation on, when best friends went on double dates and I just drove, kind of like Barb from Stranger Things, if you remember. I was Barb.
Yep. Well, yeah, I could totally see you in all those facets. I've known you for some time, and just how you identify. It's just you. There's no, and anyway, I can see all of those things, but we do definitely notice gender in the very beginning, and then shame or differences where you just don't have this sense of belonging. Yvette, what I would like to hear from you is, did you have people in your life who were encouraging you to change your sexuality, and to be involved with the conversion therapy or ex-gay ministries? And what was that like?
So I went to a charismatic church. It was very insular, and they were not about parachurch ministries. So they were not going to say, oh, go somewhere else and let someone else fix you. They were like, we're going to fix you. So it was the campus pastor's wife, who I was living in a house with 7 other Christian women, young women. And I was probably like a year into living there. And she said, you need to come to my house after church. And so I go to her house, and I had a discipler, and she went too. Her name was Shelley. And they said, and the pastor's wife said, we were at a prayer meeting and we saw a spirit of homosexuality on you, and you need to cast it out because you're putting everyone in danger, every one of your roommates. And so I was so scared. She's like, and you lied because you didn't tell us. And Shelley was saying, no, she did tell me. I just forgot. I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. So anyway, they laid hands on me. They cast out homosexuality and said, okay, now you're under quarantine. You can't go anywhere except for work and home. Read your Bible, pray, don't socialize with any of your friends, but you also need to go to every single one of your friends and tell them what happened. Tell them that you were gay, that we cast out the spirit of homosexuality. So it was like, I had to go to all of my friends, and they didn't know why I was doing this. I had I never talked about this because my pattern was you don't talk about things. And so I had to go, and basically it was shame and humiliation. And it was like, no, you're changed now. So you just have to walk it out. And that was my experience mostly in my church. I didn't have an experience with Exodus until, well, there's kind of a long story behind that, but I met Joe Dallas and he's like, oh yeah, just casting out the spirit of homosexuality, that's not going to work. And then it goes into all the, oh, it's your parents' fault. Oh, and you're finding all these reasons why there's something wrong with you.
You're on mute, Sarah.
Yep, I got it. Well, it's like the walk of shame almost, where you have to do that publicly. Oh, I'm sorry you experienced that and so much more, I'm sure. Carrie, how did you find out about Exodus and conversion therapy, ex-gay ministry, and how did you get involved? Because it was initially your idea. It was a
It was. Yeah, so I did the internet search and I came across the testimonies of Exodus, and then I found out that they had they were in umbrella organizations, and that meant that they had ministries in states and cities, and I think even around the world at that time. So I was living in Dallas, and I found Living Hope. I found their website and how to get in contact with them. And I initially, very early on, I had what they called an intake interview, where I went in and the director at the time just sat down and I shared my story with her. And I didn't get involved in Living Hope right away. I kind of went on this journey by myself and with a mentor from the church that I was going to at the time for, about 10 years. I did go to a national conference. I went to 2 of them. And then I got involved again after I graduated from seminary. Honestly, I felt God was leading me into ex-gay ministry. I thought, okay, God has changed me, got involved with Exodus, and now I'm going to see if there's a place for me to volunteer or whatever at Living Hope in Dallas. So I got involved with them. And honestly, it was there that I started to question the practices behind and the policies and the procedures and all of that of ex-gay ministry. We were not allowed to know each other's last names. There were all these strict rules. If you've seen the movie Boy Erased, yes, that depicted what it was like to be in ex-gay ministry. And then you'll hear Julie Rogers talk about it as well in Pray Away. She was also at Living Hope at the same time that I was. And I was involved with Living Hope for about a year. And it was just, there was so much shame. And that's when I finally got to the point. So I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't come back. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And one thing that I've noticed about the 3 of you, this was something that you initiated. Nobody necessarily coerced you or encouraged you to go. You went on your own free will because you were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Katrina, tell me, did you have like family involved? How was your relationship with your family? Did they know that you initially went into conversion therapy, and how are things now?
No, that was a decision that I made, and the deeper I got into praying the gay away, and especially into ex-gay ministries, and having they would call them generational curses broken off. They in the movie Miseducation of Cameron Post, they refer to the iceberg, and that your same-sex attraction is the tip of the iceberg, but there's all these elements underneath the water. And it does all go back to family of, I was a child of divorce, and I had a distant dad, that I used sports because I wanted to connect with my dad, but that opened up me to a spirit of lesbianism, and a domineering mom. My family was from Denmark, and so they believed that child porn was a big thing in Denmark. And so that opened me up to receiving it. So my family, my heritage, everything became the reason that I was sick. And so the teaching then is that you have to disconnect and distance yourself from those things that would influence you negatively. So the more counseling I went in, the more distance was created, which then created more isolationism. But then it also created this devotion to your fellow Christians, or gay Christians. You know, if you are with others who are fighting this off, it's kind of like you're the only ones who understand what you're going through. So it's definitely not a family friendly environment, and
No.
is not a place to encourage good and healthy relationships with parents and children. It's definitely a divisive practice.
I saw a lot of agreement there that it's not a family friendly, because there is a lot of division there. A question for all three of you. Could you tell me what was the turning point in which you made the decision that you couldn't change who you were? And it was like, look, I'm either going to live authentically or, I'm not. What was that turning point? Did you meet someone? Did you have a revelation, in your spiritual walk? What was that like?
I'll go.
Thank you.
So I'm bisexual, so I can fly under the radar. It doesn't seem like bisexual people get talked about much, and I often wonder how many people in the Exodus ministries who, say they're straight now, where that could be the case with them. But in the spring of 2009, my youngest daughter was 5 at the time, and she was diagnosed with cancer. And we were in the hospital. She was in treatment for 2.5 years. But when she went to the hospital for, just over a month, in the first chunk, when she was first diagnosed, I started having panic attacks. I was super anxious all the time. I felt like I was trapped. So when we got back home after that first month, I went to a therapist. And I told her my story. I told her about my daughter. I told her how anxious I was. And she said, as I listen to you speak and the things that you're talking about, I think you have PTSD. And I think that you've been battling this for a long time. And this did not come out of nowhere. And she said, and a lot of times when people have anxiety and issues with anxiety, it's because they're living an inauthentic life. And she knew nothing about that part of my life. I hadn't said one thing about it. And she said, I would really encourage you to think about it. And I knew immediately what it was. And at the time, I was the director of women's ministry for Exodus. And I'm sitting there, and I hadn't told her that. And she said, what part of you are you being inauthentic about? And I knew exactly what it was, and say, I just can't do this anymore. I was on a leave of absence. I had taken one because Erica was sick, my daughter, and I never went back. I just dragged out the leave of absence. And then when I was ready, then I just quit.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, no, I haven't seen one person change. I see a lot of destruction. I see a lot of lives torn apart. I worked with female athletes at Athletes in Action and Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And mostly I produced materials for them. But when I would talk to athletes individually who were lesbians, like they were just like me. They wanted to love God. They loved God. They wanted to do what was right. And they felt that that was the only way. It's just this tugging apart. I love God, but there's this part of me that just cannot and will not change. It was devastating. It broke my heart, and my heart's still broken over it.
That was a turning point. Carrie or Katrina, now I want to hear so much about this, but for the sake of time, do you have that pivotal moment in your life where you just thought, you know what, I can't do it anymore? Carrie, tell us, take us through that moment.
Yeah, for me, it was 10 years I had been on that journey. I thought God had changed me at that point. And as I mentioned, when I shared my story at the beginning of the hour, I became attracted to someone. And instead of white knuckling it or like suppressing that or pushing that away, I allowed myself to feel for the first time. And I, I was like, I felt alive for the first time in years. And that was the turning point for me. And I remember being on my knees in my living room floor, just crying out to God, saying, I am not straight. After all this time, I'm not straight. Do you still love me? And, that was the turning point. I started talking with my best friend about it. I had shared with people that God had changed me. And at that point in my life, I felt like a liar. And I had to reconcile all of that and my relationship with God. That was the turning point for me.
Katrina, do you remember that pivotal moment? I'm sure you had one of many, all of you.
Yes. Yeah. And I think just to agree with what Carrie said really quickly, for all of us, we all fell into the trap of saying we were healed in order to be healed. We were told that. We were told to tell people you are healed and eventually it will happen. Well, now we carry not only the guilt and shame, of our sexuality, but now we walk away and we all still have this guilt and shame of the people that we lied to because, they sat there and saw us and thought we were healed and they felt bad that they weren't. And that I just think that's important for people to see and understand that that's a part of this practice that is also so evil, and that we become, those people who are hurting other people as we're trying to get help. And it's just a very twisted practice. But for me, the turning point was definitely when I was fired. And my cover had been blown. I had attempted to be single a lot just to, stay busy and be married to Jesus. And that was my cover. And then when I lost my ministry, I had no cover anymore. And I had to figure it out. And it was a slow process. But finding, other people, other gay Christians, and just, studying and researching and just finally coming to terms with who I was and that it wasn't going anywhere. And I needed to figure out how to live with myself.
Yeah. And you know what, we could unpack this for weeks, I think. And I hope that each one of you will come back either as a panel again or individuals. And really, I want to know so much more. And the time is just getting away from us. But if you could just impart a few words for anyone watching who might be considering going through this type of therapy, if they're involved maybe with something now, or maybe even what would you say to your former self? Do you have just a few words of encouragement that you could give to a parent or an individual from the community?
Well, I just, when you see Pray Away, you'll see the former leaders, and together we have over 60 years of experience in this, like 20 years each, plus Michael Bussey and his few years. People cannot change their sexual orientation. I don't care what people what a pastor tells you, what a parent tells you, it cannot happen. We've seen it, the damaging practice over and over and over again. There are affirming churches now. You can go to Free Mom Hugs and check their resources, but look somewhere for an affirming church. That's what I would encourage anyone.
Excellent. Excellent. Carrie, Katrina, anything?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, Yvette. I just want to encourage, if you are struggling being gay and being Christian, God loves you and you are not alone. That was one of my biggest fears, and was just the isolation of thinking that I was the only one out there struggling. That was a big word that we used, struggled. But you can't do it alone. Find the courage to talk to someone, find an affirming church. There are all kinds of gay Christian organizations out there now that there wasn't 20 years ago. There are people who are gay and who are Christian. It's okay. You're okay.
Yeah, I'll jump on the end of that too and just say, you aren't broken and you don't need to be fixed. And I think, something so near and dear that when I have any opportunity, I have to say and share. And this is for those being gay and parents as well. But you have to realize that anytime someone prays for you to change you is conversion therapy. It isn't, what some people have of electroshock therapy or some of these harsher programs. Those do still exist, yes. But at the same time, going forward at your church and having someone lay hands on you, and say, spirit of perversion, go away from this person. That is also conversion therapy, and it's damaging. And that leads kids to attempt suicide just as much as the other does. And so in that, my recommendation is to the parents, find out what your church believes, find out what your pastor thinks, so that if you were to go and say, my child just came out as gay, what would you suggest? And, if your pastor responds and says, I have a great place they can go to be fixed, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And if your pastor says, we have leaders in the church that can pray, that away, that's a problem. And you need to find that out now. You need to find out where your church stands and not just send your kids blindly someplace that you don't know what they're doing to them.
Excellent points there, all to be taken. And we can have these on our website. We're going to put reminders there, pointers to look to. One last question, if we have time. After watching the Pray Away film, what's your key takeaway from the film? For each one of you is that question.
I know for me, no, for me, there were definitely pivotal quotes. And while I watched it, I was texting Sarah the whole time. But one of them was a survivor and in kind of a confronting the leader's circle, with great emotion and pain, said, I lost my soul doing the right thing. And I think people have got to see that everyone's intention somewhere are to do the right thing, and they're just being misled. We're being misled. And this is the beginning, and I hope of a season of the truth coming out, and giving people more freedom to be who they are.
Yeah, I think for me, even being in it, but it was, Michael Bussey at the end saying, as long as homophobia and transphobia exist, some form of conversion therapy will continue, and it will specifically continue in the churches. Even though we ban conversion therapy, it's clear that the churches those bans don't apply to the churches, and they will continue this until we change the culture of the church.
Yeah, that's good. And then my key takeaway is that there are still people who believe in the teaching of Exodus, even though it is shut down. There are still ministries who were under the umbrella of Exodus that are still operating. Living Hope in Dallas is still operating. First Stone in Oklahoma City, still operating. And so the teaching is still continuing that you must be right, or you must be straight to be right with God, that you must change in order to be right with God. So that was the key takeaway, that this is far from over.
Well, I certainly would only add to what all just the good fruit here in this conversation. I know it's been kind of heavy, but we have to acknowledge that moms encourage their children to go with the very best of intentions. You each went with the very best of intentions, just trying to do the right thing. And that what I'm hearing here is that confirmation that you can be gay, you can be Christian, and you can just grow in your spiritual walk and live authentically. And finally and lastly, a call to action. The Pray Away film is going to be on Netflix for a little while now. And I would encourage you, ask your coworkers to watch it, your family members, your neighbors, allies, we need to watch this film so we can be aware of what's happening, so that we can share the information about it, and that we use our voices to speak out and to stop this madness. It's like Yvette said, as long as there's transphobia, homophobia, there's going to be some sort of conversion therapy. So we need to look at our churches and see that the gay community is celebrated there, that there's same-sex weddings going on. And really, that's the only way we're going to change this. So allies, we need you. If you're part of the community, share your story with anyone who will listen, and surround yourself with safe people. And I'm looking at my notes here. Go to freemomhugs.org. You can find a chapter in your area. You can find the resources there. There's so many resources out there that there's no reason to not understand better that you can be gay and Christian, that historically, scientifically, scripturally, you can be gay and Christian. And there are films coming out. We've got the Kathy Baldock film coming out. We've got the Mama Bear documentary coming out. Katrina said earlier, there's so many things coming out that are just gonna, I believe that we are at a pivotal moment in history where the awareness is going to be raised, because most Americans have no idea that conversion is still happening. So with that, thank you, ladies, for using your voice. Thank you for being here. I hope that you'll come back again, and know that on Free Mom Hugs, we are celebrating you and everything that you set your heart and your hands to. And I do very much look forward to seeing you in person so I can hug your neck. And with that, thank you for joining us. Go watch that film and share it far and wide.